Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Preston Wilson, and I am an assistant professor of music education at Westminster Choir College of Rider University. I would like to welcome you to the DuPage Symphony Orchestra's 2022-2023 concert season. For our concert on Saturday, February 11th, we present American Spirituals and American Jazz. Our composers for the evening are none other than William Grant Still with his Symphony No. 2, subtitled Song of a New Race, and George Gershwin's Concerto in F for piano and orchestra. This will feature the phenomenal Wynona Wang at the piano, first prize winner of the 2018 Concert Artists Guild International Competition. So please, go on a journey with me to learn more about our composers and their compositions. We will start with the Dean of African American Composers, William Grant Still Jr., born May 11, 1895, and died December 3, 1978. He was born in Woodville, Mississippi, but raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. His family moved there after the death of his father. He studied the violin at age 14 or 15 and taught himself to play a number of other instruments, but doing especially well on the cello and oboe. He was inspired by the career of Samuel Coleridge Taylor to become a composer of concert music and opera. In 1911, Steele would enter Wilberforce University, an HBCU or a historically black college or university. While there, he had many opportunities to conduct the university band, as well as try his hand at composition and orchestration. He left Wilberforce in 1915 and began working as a freelance performer and arranger in the Ohio area. Throughout the 1920s, Steele was in and out of school. He attended Oberlin College, where he studied theory and counterpoint, and he also studied at the New England Conservatory with George Chadwick and Edgar Varese. While Steele did not ultimately finish his degree at any of these schools, he was awarded many honorary degrees, including a Master of Music from Wilberforce, Doctor of Music degrees from various institutions such as Howard University, another HBCU, Oberlin College, the New England Conservatory of Music, the Peabody Conservatory of Music, and the University of Southern California. He also received a Doctor of Letters from Bates College and Doctor of Laws from the University of Arkansas. He also received a number of awards. One very special award is being the second recipient of the Harmon Award in 1927. The full title of this award is the William E. Harmon Foundation Award for Distinguished Achievement Among Negroes. The foundation served as a large-scale patron of African American art that helped gain recognition for African American artists who otherwise would have remained largely unknown. He is also a two-time Guggenheim winner. He has multiple citations from the Los Angeles City Council, Los Angeles Board of Supervisors, and the Governor of Arkansas. He's the winner of the Richard Henry Lee Patriotism Award and the third annual prize of the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters in 1982. Due to the condition of society during the early and mid-1900s, William Grant Still encountered many firsts. He was the first African American composer to have a symphony performed by a professional orchestra in the United States, the Symphony No. 1, Afro-American, premiered by Howard Hanson and the Rochester Philharmonic in 1930. He also became the first African American to conduct a major symphony orchestra in the United States when he led the Los Angeles Philharmonic in 1936. In the world of opera, his Troubled Island was the first by an African American to be performed by a major opera company, the New York City Opera, in 1949. And that same opera was the first by an African American to be nationally televised. That opera was based on the 1791 Haitian slave revolt. This is to highlight that though his music was well received, Steele was still pushing the proverbial envelope with his music as it relates to race relations in American culture. Many of his compositions and musical works were rooted in African music with messages that spoke to the concerns of African Americans at that time. Which brings us to his composition for this concert, Symphony No. 2 in G minor, Song of a New Race. It was premiered by the Philadelphia Orchestra under the direction of Leopold Stokowski on December 10, 1937, and it is believed to be an extension or an evolution of the Afro-American Symphony or Symphony No. 1. Steele's concern for the position of African Americans in United States society is reflected in many of his works. If his first symphony represented the Negro of days not far removed from the Civil War, Steele saw the G minor as representing the American colored man of today, in so many instances, a totally new individual produced through the fusion of white, Indian, and Negro bloods, his own ancestry. He does this by utilizing the harmonic and rhythmic language of jazz and blues in a classical context. He also employs distinctly African American elements and gestures in his music. For example, call and response. Call and response, for example, in the Black church is when someone says, God is good, the response is all the time. And when someone says all the time, the response is God is good. The first movement opens beautifully with these sweeping harmonies. As the first movement opens up, you will hear the first theme. The first theme has the melody in the woodwinds and is supported by a counter melody in the strings. Let's take a listen. This first theme is later flipped where the melody will be in the strings and then is supported by the counter melody in the brass. The second theme is lyrical yet bluesy and is a great example of the call and response or the conversation between the instrument families. Take a listen. The second movement gives me visions of old Hollywood glamour. Long lighted staircases, brightly colored panels, character shoes, fringe. The mood is very filmesque with its sweet song-like melody. You will also hear a combination of lush, expressive, true to its name, strings coupled with instrumental solos. Let's take a listen. This short, dance-like movement has a bounce to it, a lightness. Moderately fast is contrasting in tone and atmosphere with the rest of the symphony. In this first example, here is the theme with its gently driving tempo. Feel free to nod your heads if you're so inclined to do so. In this next example, here is the theme again, but with a thicker texture, more instruments, more intensity, and the elements of big band with the utilization of the entire orchestra. The final movement has a subdued, tempered energy. You will continue to hear romantic, expressive harmonies. And to that point, the chromaticism of the harmonies reminds me of the tunes of Negro spirituals. For example, in this excerpt, you'll hear remnants of Steal Away, specifically the B section. My Lord calls me, he calls me by the thunder. This excerpt also includes the very unmoving beat, moderately slow, means with practice for Our other composer is George Gershwin, who was born September 26, 1898, and died July 11, 1937, at the young age of 38. With his original name being Yakov Gershwin, he was born into a Russian Jewish family, with his father, Moish Gershowitz, mother, Rosa Bruskin, and siblings, Ira, Arthur, and Francis. They all immigrated to America and changed their names to the Gershwins. The father became Morris, the mother became Rose, and we now know George Gershwin. His family did not expect him to be musical. In fact, when the family acquired a piano in 1910, it was originally meant for his brother Ira. In George's own words, quote, "Whatever I know about music, I've wrenched out for myself. I had no parents to stand over me and encourage me in the little tunes that I had used to make up." End quote. Moreover, Gershwin's father thought that George would end up a bum, as he was involved in fights, fires, and theft. However, George Gershwin credits music for turning him good. Gershwin's music career started when he dropped out of high school in 1914 and began working in Tin Pan Alley by advertising and promoting sheet music by previewing tunes on the piano. In 1916, he composed his first published song, "When You Want 'Em, You Can't Get 'Em, When You've Got 'Em, You Don't Want 'Em," as well as his first solo piano composition, Rialto Ripples. He enjoyed especially the songs of Irving Berlin and Jerome Kern, referring to Berlin as America's Franz Schubert and stating that Kern was, quote, "the first composer who made me conscious that most popular music was of inferior quality and that musical comedy was made of better material," end quote. Gershwin shared the common goal of bringing respectability to jazz music, which in 1922 was still being regarded as evidenced in a New York American editorial as degrading, pathological, nerve-irritating, sex-exciting music. George and his brother Ira would later become an inseparable duo where George wrote all the music and Ira wrote all the lyrics, ruling the popular song genre in the 1920s. Some of their greatest hits include Someone to Watch Over Me, Rhapsody in Blue, An American in Paris, Porgy and Bess, and I've Got Rhythm. Gershwin was described as being very sociable and charismatic. However, he began having hand coordination problems in early 1937 and showed other symptoms of illness such as disturbing mood swings, hallucinations, and abnormal food spills while eating. Initial medical tests did not reveal any physical illnesses, but his condition got worse until he eventually fell into a coma. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, but it was too late to perform surgery, which ultimately led to his tragically young death at the age of 38. And similar to Mozart, who also died at a young age, what would music be like if Mozart had lived another 10 years? And I pose the same question now. What would music be like if George Gershwin lived another 10 years, as he is cemented as one of the greats and pioneers of jazz and popular music. The piece selected for this concert is Concerto in F Major for Piano and Orchestra. The concerto was premiered by Walter Damrose and the New York Symphony Orchestra at Carnegie Hall on December 3, 1925, with George Gershwin as the piano soloist. The Concerto in F Major is often called Gershwin's most classical composition, which caused some critics to stumble on the question of whether it should be considered jazz or classical. Commissioned and conducted by Mr. Damrose and the New York Symphony Orchestra, the conductor described Gershwin as the prince who has taken Cinderella, jazz, by the hand and openly proclaimed her a princess to the astonished world, no doubt to the fury of her envious sisters. The first movement is a plethora of moods and feelings. At times you'll hear crashes from the orchestra, or you'll hear the opening Charleston and you'll want to dance. At other times, you'll hear these chromatic, sultry lines that have a haunting-like quality. For example, like this. The second movement opens up with a trumpet solo, and it really gives me the blues. What do you think? This movement is also the most relaxed of the three movements. There's a smoothness to it, even when the tempo is being pushed, and even with the repeated pitch sequences. Take a listen. The final movement certainly lives up to its title, Allegro con brio, or fast with vigor. Now, one of the things that you will hear is the rat-a-tat-tat motive. Rat-a-tat-tat is defined as a series of sharp, repeated sounds. Some say even similar to the knocking of a door. We hear this on the piano. In this movement, you will also hear some familiar material from movement number 1. The piece ends with an exciting but long climax. You think it's over, but it's really not. Thank you so much for listening. Again, my name is Dr. Preston Wilson, and I certainly hope you enjoyed learning about these two amazing composers and their amazing compositions. And most importantly, I hope you are ready for American Spirituals and American Jazz, the DuPage Symphony Orchestra's February 11th concert at 7:30 p.m. Please visit dupagesymphony.org for more educational videos and listening guides.